viewers, welcome to Horn of African Digest program. My name is Daniel, and I have here with me Mr. Lawrence Freeman, who graced us with his presence in our studio. Mr. Freeman is a political economic analyst for Africa who has been involved in economic development policies of the continent for over 30 years. He is a researcher, a writer, and speaker of a variety of topics concerning Africa. He has been visiting the continent multiple times. He knows a lot about Africa, especially the Western Africa and now Ethiopia. He teaches courses on African history in the Maryland area in the United States. And he has numerous articles written about Africa, which can be found on his official website, Lawrence Freeman, AfricaInTheWorld.com. So thank you very much for coming, Mr. Freeman.
My pleasure.
Yeah, very nice to have you here. Today we discuss about mostly focusing on the current situation in Ethiopia and the representation of the country by the international media. So the other day I heard you say people in the United States are unreasonably guided by the media narrative.
Yes.
About Ethiopia specifically. So do you think the media is setting the agenda for the U.S. government in crafting its policies for Africa?
In a certain sense, yes. The media, contrary to what most people think, are not objective truth seekers. They are part of the higher operation, which I say is an oligarchical operation of a political financial elite that tries to dominate world politics and economy. They actually work for them. And therefore, when you come out with this narrative against Ethiopia, it's designed to shape the thinking of the American people and shape the thinking of our congressmen and senators and our president. Because the problem I have as an older senior citizen now is the United States people don't think very well. They don't investigate. They're not challenging ideas. When a line comes out in the media, they accept it. Oh, that's what the line is. Okay, I agree. Everybody's saying it, I'll say it. And the same happens with our Congress and Senate. In fact, the CNN has taken credit for its ability to influence the United States Senate. So the media is determining the policy of my country. That's not good.
That's for sure.
That's a shame.
Okay, that's what I see. So by extension, because if they influence the public opinion, they end up in influencing the government.
Correct.
So we can probably safely say that it's the media which is running the government.
Yeah,
in a way.
The media is pulling and shaping the way our elected officials are thinking. Absolutely.
Okay.
They have no independent research capability.
At all.
They depend on the media.
Okay. Let's go to this, your take on this, like an expert analysis, for instance. What would possibly be the motive for this giant multinational media corporations?
Right.
Flagrant anti-Ethiopian biased reporting.
This is very hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been trying to explain it. The reason it's difficult to understand is because it's not logical. The problem you have is the United States is shaped by geopolitical thinking, which actually goes back to the British several hundred years ago. Geopolitical thinking. They look at the world as a fixed entity. It doesn't grow, it doesn't develop. The key thing for the geopolitical, which is the Western faction, is control. How do we control this fixed sum so that we at least are on top and everybody else is on the bottom? And this, I call it a disease of thinking, because it's actually not, the world is constantly changing and developing, and we are, as human beings, constantly changing. But yet they say we have to have this control. That's why all the attacks on China are motivated by geopolitics. Ethiopia, they had a relationship with the previous government. And you have several members of the Biden administration who are very close to the TPLF and worked with the TPLF for many, many years. Their view is we cannot let this current leadership under the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and others be outside of our control. And they don't want to see Ethiopia develop. They do nothing to help Ethiopia's development. For example, they have done nothing to support the Ethiopia's Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, for example, which is a dam of development. They want to have control, and they have come to the conclusion that this current leadership will not be under their control. And therefore, they'd rather work with and bring back some of the old leadership that they're familiar with, and that will carry out their policy. It's a very, I agree, it's difficult to understand because it's not rational, and it's not logical.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. It's a geopolitical mindset. They have banking control, they have political control, they have media, and they have decided to launch an absolutely unprecedented, vicious attack on Ethiopia for the last year. And for the last year, this is what I've been focused on primarily.
Yeah. Thank you. I would understand if for the geopolitical reasons or for access to resources, African untapped resources, I would understand that. But specifically the media, even some individuals, I would think, however organized it may seem, from the government side, I would understand the government, however wrong it may be, the U.S. government might have some interest in weakening this government of Ethiopia because it's obviously a nationalist government. But the media, in a way that it seems to be extremely well organized, they campaign on it to the extent that at times it was recklessly dangerous what CNN did the other day, remember, rebels at the gates of the Capitol with a wrong picture. And next day, that Becky Anderson woman had an interview with the spokesperson of the Prime Minister. And she was not even backing down. She was doubling down, saying that we stand by our reporting. We stand by our reporting of posting fake pictures.
Yes.
So could it possibly be like money, business, or even blackmail? How could some people be so biased on this?
Well, first of all, when you say the U.S. government, and of course I've been involved in politics in the United States for 50 years, it's not homogeneous. There are factions of the U.S. government, many factions, and it goes beyond the presidency. There's a whole grouping of people that affect the U.S. government. There's the Council on Foreign Relations, the largest think tank of the established United States. They have an effect on the government. Other think tanks. You have people going back and forth between think tanks, the government. So it's a large grouping of people that have all kinds of different interests. Therefore, the government, my government, let's say right now, under President Biden, is being pulled, our government is being pulled in a direction that not everybody in the government would agree with. I don't even think Joe Biden agrees with it. But then again, I don't think he knows anything about it. I think Africa and Ethiopia is so small in his list. He's told what to say. You bring up the question of the media. The media knows that they're not telling the truth. And that's why I came here.
Yeah.
I said, if there's any place in the world I want to be in Ethiopia right now to defend them, because what the media is doing is called psychological warfare. It's a form of warfare. It doesn't use bullets, it uses words. And they're trying to weaken the resolve of this government and the people of Ethiopia. They, in a certain sense, this media is sometimes more powerful than the government. They actually can move a policy better sometimes than an elected official. Because they're operating it's not based on money, it's based on control. And it's true, many of the media are getting their marching orders and funding from very high levels of this geopolitical oligarchy. They essentially work for them because they openly lie. So they're not making a mistake, because when you come to Addis, like we were driving here, the streets are filled with people walking, the traffic jams are still there.
Has never been more peaceful than
right,
this. Yeah.
And everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So when someone says the opposite and compares Addis to Kabul, Afghanistan, they're doing that to create hysteria, fear. They're operating as, let's say, the fourth branch of government. And sometimes they're more powerful than the elected government.
Thank you very much. I mean, the way you see it, I'm very happy that you've been able to travel around, and probably it's as peaceful as it could ever get, Addis Ababa.
I knew when I saw the reports, I knew this was all wrong.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, the place I want to be in the world is I want to be in Ethiopia right now, because I want to take this on.
We are very grateful to have you around, Mr. Freeman. So let me go to another question, a very interesting one. The media's organized campaign, again, outright lies, as you know.
Yes.
I sometimes think that they are turning out to be so childish. At times. Let me give you this example, for instance, from the Telegraph the other day. The Ethiopian Prime Minister said, we have to work very hard and get out of dependency on foreign aid for relief.
Right.
The next morning, the Telegraph went out with a headline saying Ethiopian Prime Minister implied that he may stop aid from millions of starving people in Tigray, he said.
Typical.
So how could you be so, it's a big respectable media institution, the Telegraph. So what kind of hatred or what kind of misrepresentation could that possibly be? Wouldn't you consider that as childish folly?
It's not, well, childish, yes, but the Telegraph,
Yeah.
BBC, the London Economist, they're a branch of British intelligence. They're functioning as part of British intelligence. So when they put out these stories, like when it's ludicrous on one level, but it's part of an operation. It's part of a campaign. They're not independent.
Yeah.
They're deliberately trying to create a certain atmosphere around Ethiopia to weaken the people, to weaken the government. But you have to see it. British intelligence is the oldest, most sophisticated intelligence we've seen in the last several hundred years. Mm-hmm. They're still operating today, even though it's a tiny little poor island. They still operate with their intelligence all over the world. Mm-hmm. And they operate in every country, including the United States. Mm-hmm. These are not independent positions of the Telegraph, BBC, London Economist. When I read them,
No.
I read them for the purpose of understanding what British intelligence is up to.
So talking about the British intelligence, I know you're not a lawyer, you're not giving a legal opinion here, but I heard the other day that there was part of the orchestrated campaign of giving a wrong picture about the city. There was this BBC worker in Addis Ababa who they forced, we heard that, against her will, to relocate or to evacuate. She was confident that the city was safe as you are now, but they said either you work with us
Yes.
or you leave.
Yes.
And she did.
Yes.
And then she ended up in Nairobi. The next day she was murdered.
Wow.
You haven't heard about that? It was on the story.
No, but I've noticed a number of cases where people have been ordered by their government to leave.
Yeah, and then she was murdered in Nairobi.
Wow, I
so,
didn't know
like, wouldn't that make them a culprit, or like, isn't that a crime?
It is a crime, but you'd have to be able to prove it. But that's quite a story.
It is a story, yeah.
I mean, this is the first time I've heard.
Yeah, it goes even to that extent. Well, I mean, talking about crime, let's change it to the recently exposed video conference that you have.
Yes.
I'm sure you have seen.
Yes.
So these people were openly advocating an overthrow, a violent overthrow of a legitimately elected government.
Yes.
The Ethiopians, doesn't that constitute treason in the textbook definition of a treason for the Ethiopian side, and the diplomats, the former and the current. Mm-hmm. Yamamoto is in Somalia. He was
right, but he's a former.
He was a former for Ethiopia. Oh, he is a former for Somalia too? I
don't know if he was in Somalia, but the thing about Yamamoto is that, which wasn't properly put forth in the article, is he was the assistant, he was the director of African Affairs for the State Department.
He used to be.
Right, so he was not just a former diplomat, he was a former American official. That was on that call.
Okay, so...
Are they violating the law?
Yeah. Aren't they?
I don't know, I'm not a lawyer, but I brought up the same question when I wrote about it. I said, is this actually a violation of the law? Now what's interesting is there is a report that came out of Sputnik news service, mm-hmm. that the group that organized that call has direct connections to USAID and the National Endowment of Democracy, both operations out of the United States.
Yeah.
Therefore, why you have a U.S. operation, and the National Endowment of Democracy works on and off with the CIA. So you have high-level intelligence sources, forces in the United States arranging a call with the leader of the TPLF, former ambassador, with Americans, officials, and retired diplomats. That's pretty outrageous. And it basically proves that there is a conspiracy.
Yeah.
I mean, there was your conspiracy. They're conspiring. And the fact you have elected officials, former elected officials, saying, we want the TPLF to win. When are they going to win the war is one of the things. We can't change Abiy, so we're going to have to win on the battlefield. That is, it seems to me it's a violation of international law. And it's not been covered, it's not been played up in the United States at all.
Yeah, I heard that some Ethiopian scholars have actually filed a petition to the CIA and the FBI so that these people should be litigated.
Yes,
because
I agree.
It's internationally speaking, it's in terms of international relations, it's conduct and becoming for the diplomats. I don't know how their reputation will be completely tarnished after this, but if it is a crime, they have to be They have to be persecuted. That's what they were actually petitioning for.
It's a huge story, and it proves the point that that I've been making and others have been making. But obviously, it's been not picked up by the media. Now, why?
Why exactly? Okay. So let's go to the other question that I had in mind for you. So with the war, the current, judging it from the current trends, the war would be over sooner or later. Anyway, sooner than later. So what do you think, in your expert analysis, what do you think would be the next battlefront? I'm sure this bias against the country and the people is not going to dissipate into thin air all of a sudden. So there should be some other things being made or being cooked.
Well, my concern is that people in the Ethiopian government do not relax after we make some progress, because I don't think it is going to be over. I think there's all kinds of nasty operations are going to be run. For example, even when we end the war, which we should, and there'll be some negotiation, will there still be an effort to have a, quote, transition joint government, which has to include TPLF officially, even though they weren't elected. The only election we have here in June and September is Prime Minister Abiy won, and he's the duly elected Prime Minister with the Prosperity Party. But I think there's going to be efforts to support an effort to get the TPLF back into government in some position. That's one thing. I think the issue of the GERD is going to continue to be used, and that's another example of geopolitics. Why did both the Trump and the Biden administration both not support the GERD? Because of why? Because of their relations to use Egypt as part of the deal with Israel and other countries in the Middle East. And they got Egypt's support. There must have been an agreement that they will then put pressure on the GERD against Egypt. This is the way it works. So I think that the GERD issue, although for the Ethiopians it's a fait accompli. We've done 2 fillings. We're going to do a 3rd next summer. But for the West, I don't think they've quite given up on that. And I think things like that are going to occur. Look, the ethnicity question itself is they could continue to manipulate this. And the danger is that as we get closer to a possible conclusion of the war, which I'm hopeful, as we get closer to it, there may be what I was looking at in the Congress and in the State Department. They're going to claim a great humanitarian crisis in Tigray. They're going to use a humanitarian crisis with allegations so far unproven of genocide and ethnic cleansing, which have been there for months with no proof.
There's the new campaign, right? A new campaign?
Well, it's going to extend.
I heard.
And then there may not be, your viewers may not know, there's something that came about in the late 1990s, initiated by Tony Blair and George Soros, called the Responsibility to Protect, R2P. And R2P says that we in the international community have the right and obligation to militarily intervene in nations when we see leaders carrying out genocide against their own people. This was the reason used to overthrow Gaddafi 10 years ago, and they destroyed the Sahel. What they may do as we get closer to possibly a conclusion of the war is they say, no, Abiy is killing his own people, we have to intervene, and then you could see military. These are all possibilities. I'm not predicting what will happen,
I know.
But you have to consider this. And I'm hoping that the wiser people in Ethiopia and the diaspora, I'm in touch with them, think this way. Because I'm a warrior, so I'm used to fighting, but not everybody else is. And we have to get a better fighting spirit going here.
Oh, that's very interesting. So that leads me to my next question. I heard you the other day in one of the interviews, you were suggesting that we should be establishing or organizing some sort of a crisis or emergency war room. To fight back and counterbalance the misguided international representation of the country. What do you have in mind? How do you advise the Ethiopian government if you were asked?
Well, if I was asked, I would say let's get 3, 4, maybe 5, and we don't need 5, dedicated Ethiopian people. Let's set up a room. Let's digest and review each day the lies and slanders that come out. Then let's decide which ones we want to respond and how, so that every attack we're counterattacking. So we don't let the narrative go. The narrative goes, we don't respond. Like, for example, on December 1st, what was that, Wednesday, when Lalibela, which is dear to my heart, I visited there, was being liberated, the Washington Post comes out with an article, and they describe the beginning of the conflict as a falling out between Abiy and the TPLF in November of last year. Now, 6,000 soldiers, I was told, were killed,
Yes.
and they started a war. They attacked the government militarily.
Yeah,
and the Washington Post calls it a falling out. You see, that's the problem. That should have been attacked. So the media is constantly coming in with these insinuations to destroy the actual truth. And what I'm suggesting is we have a group of people in the government or assigned by the news agency of the government, and we respond. We respond in real time, that day. When some slander comes out, we respond the same day and say what the truth is. And we get that out to think tanks, Congress, media, institutions all over the West. So they have on their desk, through the news wire, a valid, truthful response.
That sounds to be a very interesting idea, but do you have, I mean, a clear picture? Because I too feel that that's going to be the battlefront we're going to face, the country is going to face. So do you have a very clear picture as to how many people or what kind of organizational setup? You said 5. I wonder, was just calling a number, or I wonder if 100, probably 500 people, very qualified ones. I don't think Ethiopia is short of those kind of people.
I don't think you need that many. I think you need dedicated people.
Yeah.
They should be able to be fluent, obviously, in Amharic and also in English.
As well.
We read the news. We read the key stories that come in. We discuss how we want to respond, which ones we want to respond. Someone's assigned to write them.
Okay.
We edit the final review, and then we have maybe another section which has a list of emails or other ways of distributing this so it gets all around the world quickly. And with the electronic and platforms that we have, obviously, in the old days when I started out, we were faxing out press releases.
Yeah, I know.
So
I remember that.
Okay, so we know that.
Yeah.
I don't know, we'd have to negotiate, but I don't think it's in the hundreds. I think a small, dedicated group.
And qualified.
Yeah, sort of like the equivalent, a media equivalent of Navy SEALs.
Oh, yeah, I think that makes sense.
In fact, if you get too many people, you have too many different voices coming in.
That's true. A media equivalent of Navy SEALs.
Rapid response team, let's say.
Okay, that's fine. So with this war media emergency setup,
right?
So what do you have in mind?
Well, we're discussing a strategy to essentially set up a rapid response team.
Oh.
So that all the attacks that come in, we review them each day, we decide which ones are worthy of response, and then we rapidly, the same day in real time, get out a response that's based on the truth of what's going on, not the media lies.
Okay, that sounds wide-ranging strategic direction, which I think could work miracles if it is set up with the right kind of people and the right arrangement. I know that you have visited Africa a lot.
Yes, many times.
Many times, and you have traveled in Sudan, Mali, Chad, Nigeria, Central African Republic, Cote d'Ivoire. I even read about your involvement in a Trans-Africa Water Project.
Yes.
And developing the African Infrastructure Plan.
Yes.
After Alexander Hamilton's
yes.
model. What do you have to share with us?
Because when I look at Africa, the major problem that the African continent has, I know it's 54 nations, but all nations have a similar problem, is the lack of infrastructure. The lack of electricity is actually killing Africans every day. Because without electricity, you can't have food, you can't have manufacturing, you can't have hospitals. We need 1,000 additional gigawatts of power.
Wow.
We have 100,000+ for sub-Saharan Africa. We need 50,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. And there's actually a proposal, an integrated high-speed rail network for Africa. We need thousands and thousands of new hospitals. We need medical training centers. To get anything done, to grow food, you need electricity. To have manufacturing, you need electricity. To have a hospital, you need electricity. To have a university, you need electricity. Therefore, for me, electricity is a human right. Food is a human right. These human right people, they talk about everything else but that. We have parents, mothers, each day trying to figure out how to feed their children. That's a crime. It's immoral. I'm opposed to it. Alexander Hamilton, one of my heroes of America, he designed a system that took 13 poor colonies, all agricultural based, and we had $72 million in debt, foreign and domestic. He reorganized the debt. he reorganized the colonies into a central government. This is very important because only when you have a strong national government can you actually develop your nation. We have in the United States, for better, it's not the best right now, but it's a nation. Ethiopia is a nation, a sovereign nation. For me, sovereignty is very important. And that's what, when I see the efforts by various people to promote an ethnic group to attack a sovereign nation, the issue is clear for me. I mean, even if the nation is making mistakes, you can't have groups overthrowing nation states. And one of the things that I've been discussing with people for over a year now in Ethiopia is we're going to have a serious discussion. When we get past this war, we have to get back on track to development. That's where Ethiopia has led East Africa in development, eliminating poverty, which is my goal, to eliminate poverty. Ethiopia and I agree on this question. But we're going to have a very open, contentious discussion on ethnicity versus citizenship. My view is we have an Ethiopian citizenship of a united Ethiopia, and that various cultural groups in Ethiopia should not be eliminated, but they should work together for the common interest of developing Ethiopia as Ethiopia citizens, not ethnic citizens. Because actually, ethnicity doesn't have citizenship.
Yeah.
The state has citizenship.
That's true. It's a very interesting point that you raised, because I know that you've been to Nigeria, and then recently you have witnessed the problem or the chaos that basing everything on ethnicity creates for Africa. So the reason why I'm raising this is, let me combine the two questions. African solutions for African problems.
Right.
That's one. I would think that most of these ethnic problems, or whatever kind of problems for that matter, Africa is suffering from, is primarily by the colonialists, caused by the colonialists. And as you were telling me, the problem that we have regarding ethnicity in Ethiopia is not exported to us from colonialists, but we created it ourselves.
Right.
So how do you compare the Nigerian situation to the Ethiopian situation, briefly?
Well, I mean, I spent weeks and months in Nigeria for many years. I was just there in April. This was done deliberately by Lord Lugar in the early 1900s on behalf of the British, was to keep southern, western, northern Nigeria, keep the Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba at each other's throats, never unite them as one country of Nigeria. And in fact, when you go to Nigeria, even today, you have people identifying themselves. I'm an Igbo first, then Nigerian. One of the things the British did, and the French did it slightly differently, was to make sure there was no strong central conceptual notion of a nation state. It's always a group of ethnicities. That's a killer. Because the United States, and this is what Lincoln, my hero, President Abraham Lincoln, we had a war over 4 years. 750,000 Americans died in that war. And Lincoln would have continued it until the surrender. That war was fought to keep a union, to keep a republic. The whole world would be different if we had lost that war. The British would have carved us up. That, for me, is so fundamental. The union, the republic, has to be kept intact, because that's how one generation policy goes into the next, and the next. The continuation of a people goes through a government. And therefore, you have to have that. And in Nigeria today, they don't have it. And it's still a major problem. They're still having conferences and seminars on how to solve a problem that began over a century ago. Ethiopia did it to themselves, and we're going to have to solve that problem. But see, this is a larger issue for Africa. Because Africa is filled with ethnicities. I mean, in Nigeria alone, there are hundreds outside the three main ones I mentioned. If we were to allow, and this is where the Biden administration is playing with fire, real fire, because if they continue to tilt their support towards the TPLF coming back to power in some form, they are opening the Pandora's box that every ethnic group could attack the government and demand to come back into power. Like we saw the election in Kenya back in 2008, when they formed the joint government. But the Biden administration, I don't think Biden knows this. He's my president, but he doesn't know what's going on in Africa at all. But nevertheless, he could be pulled in by people like Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, Samantha Power, others. And if we become the source of supporting ethnic groups against nation states, the legacy of the Biden administration will be blood in Africa, the way Obama's is in the Sahel.
Yes.
And I'm hoping that if we are clear enough on this point, that maybe we can bring some wisdom to saner people in the Biden administration.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let me bring this, since it's just a continuation of the question that I already raised. The African people now seem to be organized and coming in throngs to support the Ethiopian cause.
Yes, yes.
Even the terminology, Ethiopia is fighting African war,
Yes.
came from Africa.
Yes.
There are some amazing kids, young people.
Yes.
There is this guy, Mika, in Tanzania, who is such an advocate of Ethiopian cause. So do you see any hope in solving African problems with African solutions, since most Africans are now coming together for support of Ethiopia?
Yeah, I think I hate to say that a war is a good thing, but there may be a silver lining, because it actually may unite Ethiopians to become more committed to the nation state. And it actually is rallying Africans. I'm in touch with a lot of different countries in Africa, and they're very upset about what's going on. I mean, very upset. They haven't come out as vocal as they should be.
Oh, yeah.
They should come out and say, this is wrong. But nevertheless, there is a spirit, this nevermore conception, the hashtag,
Yeah.
I think is real, but it can't just be a hashtag, and it can't just be demonstrations. We have to defeat a plan to disrupt Ethiopia, regime change, or some kind of intervention on the humanitarian crisis condition. We have to defeat it. That's what I'm interested in doing. I think if we keep hitting the Biden administration in the West in terms of what are you really prepared to do this kind of damage in Africa, and therefore drive the United States further out of Africa. We're losing, we've lost the Horn of Africa, my country's influence in the Horn of Africa. We could lose even more influence in Africa. And the Biden administration, like Trump, like Obama, they can attack China for the rest of their lives. That's not going to change anything. China is here, and China is helping. And the United States is losing. So we want to bring back the best of America. And I think there is a great part of America. I love my country.
Of course you do.
And I think we can do a lot better if my policy of development was implemented in the United States. I think Africa would be better off, but they don't need us to tell them what to do. We can do certain things to empower, to help empower. And I believe they are long-term, low-interest credit for infrastructure. If we build electricity, if we build roads, if we build railroads, a long-term production plan, that these things take time. The interest has to be low. Can't be, you're not interested in making money, you're interested in building an economy. We can issue that credit and then let the Africans develop, and their economies will flourish without any great Western influence. And I think that's something I would like to see my country adopt, a Hamiltonian policy for Africa.
Hamiltonian policy. That is a very interesting terminology, Hamiltonian policy we need in Africa.
Yes.
And I hope the U.S. government and those officials who have jaundiced kind of view about Ethiopia would know the actual truth coming very soon. So finally, do you see hope for Ethiopia?
Well, I do.
You do.
First of all, I'm an old hand at Africa, and I would say you have to be an optimist to work in Africa because there's a lot of sad stories. But Ethiopia, as I say, I got attracted. I've been involved in Ethiopia about 12 years now. And I looked at their economic policy first, and I say, this is very interesting. The idea of a developmental state where the government consciously fosters the development of infrastructure, which Meles did. And then I looked at the history of Ethiopia, and I became fascinated with the Battle of Adwa, 1896. And I see, and the Ethiopian people have a very bold vision. Actually, in many cases, they have a bigger vision than the economy would suggest, because there's still a lot of poverty here, and still a lot of problems. Yet, despite that, they think big. And then I look at the GERD. I said, well, this is exactly what's needed, 6,200 megawatts of power. And this will be the largest dam in Africa. Now, it's still a drop in the bucket in terms of what Africa really needs, but it's a big drop. And when I look at those kind of things, I say the Ethiopian people can provide leadership, and have provided leadership, to the whole African continent in economic issues, which is where I start from. But also in the mindset of Ethiopians is different. They think bigger or bolder. And therefore, I'm really do hope we could end this conflict as soon as possible. We prevent any reckless misadventure intervention by the West, and that Ethiopia can resume its leadership. Don't forget, you're going to have a big reconstruction problem. We have to rebuild Tigray, parts of Tigray. We have IDP, millions of people, IDPs in Afar, Amara, Tigray. Tigray has to be fully integrated back into the economy. It's a lot of work. If the West had any brains, they would be supporting that. Not by giving aid alone, which is going to be needed, but again, by helping build infrastructure for Ethiopia to bring these people back to work, to give them jobs, to build a manufacturing center, which is what you're trying to do in Hawassa. These are the kind of things we have to think about. We have, even though we're fighting a war now, we have to think post-war. And this is also something Lincoln did. Lincoln's plans for reconstruction of the South never got carried out after he was assassinated. And one of the reasons we still have backwardness in the southern United States is because Lincoln's reconstruction program wasn't carried out. We have to have an Ethiopia reconstruction program thinking about it now, even before the war is over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. I hope those policymakers and influencers in the United States and Europe would have as clear idea about Africa and Ethiopia in crafting their policies as you do.
Yes.
And I'm sure your commentaries and expert analysis would be very helpful for many people, including us Ethiopians, in crafting our policies. And I'm sure this is not going to be a final discussion that you and I would have. I'm very grateful that I know you have been busy, you spared that precious time to spend time with us and for your brilliant insight on Ethiopia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'm a fighter, and so I can't be defeated easily.
I love that sentiment of strength. Thank you very much, viewers. We have had a very interesting discussion and insightful analysis by none other than Lawrence Freeman, an expert of African affairs and a staunch ally of Africa and Ethiopia as well. This is going to be the first one. We're going to be having more discussions and sharing of analysis from him in the coming days through Zoom and direct interactions. And thank you very much again. Hope to see you next time.